Welcome to another episode of Exposed. Exposed is a new youth talk show on Mohawk TV. The purpose of the show is to expose the issues that matter to Kahnawake youth and to provoke thought and discussion on those issues. I'm one of your panelists, Jessica Deer.
I'm Curran Jacobs.
And I'm JD Saylor.
Yeah, so Hogan was unavailable this week because of his music career, which good luck to him. But with us in studio is JD Saylor. So do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'm from here, obviously. I go to Concordia University. I'm graduating this year in Western Society and Culture.
Look at you.
Well, thanks for coming on the show.
No problem.
And so for this week's episode, we're going to be discussing various issues surrounding racism. I guess what sparked our idea for this week's show was the editorial in the Eastern Door on April 8th by Steve Bonspiel. It was about a sports article by the Shelbyville Daily Union. I think it's somewhere in near Chicago. But they had a sports article on two teams that are baseball, I think. Mm-hmm. One of them was called the Mohawks and one was called the Rams, and the title was Rams Massacre Mohawks. And throughout the whole article, they kind of just kept going with the funny references towards Indians. And some of them were they were the Rams scalped the Mohawk players, and there was at this one point they made a reference to the plural of Mohawk being Mohegans. Which is, yeah,
that's being uninformed, though. I think that's where a lot of racism stems.
Ignorance.
Yeah, ignorance. And for some people, unfortunately, it's not their fault that they don't know a lot of things. But I mean, if you're uninformed, you can't just make general judgments about people. Yeah, stereotypes exist, but I mean, not everybody fits into them. That's why they're called stereotypes.
Yeah. That's what with I mean, I don't understand, not to say that it's understandable, but wherever this Shelbyville place is, that there's not, I guess, reserves or native populations in that area, and I guess that's where I don't want to say understanding, but it's okay, they're ignorant and maybe it's not their fault, they haven't been exposed to I guess our people, but when it's people around this area, around Kahnawake, that are completely ignorant, it's no excuse.
Well, that's exactly. I would like to think as an optimist, right, that by living in the area with people, especially around a reserve, in Chateauguay and Saint Constant, even in Montreal, that there's a kind of a more understanding and a level of respect towards each other and stuff like that. But yeah. The word savage gets thrown around a lot. Something I noticed when I was in high school, too.
As did I.
And that's something, I personally, I haven't, I guess, had any, racist remarks towards myself. I mean, people don't really, visually, I don't look Native at all. So when someone finds out I'm Native, they're their usual reaction is, but you're blonde. It's you have blue eyes. And then they'll say something are you half? And I kind of no, and I just don't want to get into that whole debate about
and that's
we're not supposed to value blood quantum. And
I think that in that situation, right, if somebody is gonna ask you about where you're from and who you are and ask questions but in a positive manner, that's cool, right? But if automatically they're gonna be start calling you down because you're Native or calling you down because you're not, using negative language and being inappropriate, that's really uncool, and I think that's where all the racism lies, right?
I think it's funny how the article, the editorial that Steve wrote, was about, a sports article, and I find around here that happens a lot with sports teams. When you, I'm sure there's been a lot of players, whether it's whether you're really young or young adults, that the parents and the players, start making racist comments and gestures towards their opposing team.
Well, I think we have a double standard working against us, right? It's not just because there's already enough conflict between French and English as is, but then for us it's French versus English Mohawk people, so there's two categories that they're aiming at in terms of racist comments and stuff like that. Yeah. We have a lot working for us.
But I guess going back to like ignorant comments, I don't know. I find it still surprises me when there's people in the Montreal area that they don't know what Kahnawake is.
Well, when I was in Lachine once, when I got my first speeding ticket, actually, the officer pulled me over. He looked at my license, and he was gonna write me a ticket not only for speeding but for false license because my P.O. box wasn't on it. And he actually asked if I live in a tree or something. And I was thinking, no, I'm like, I just have a P.O. box number. No one that I know, their license is on that. And I checked around after. None of my parents, none of my friends, no one had their P.O. box number written on their license plate. It's not mandatory to have it. A street address, yes, but not a P.O. box number.
That's what, speaking of like P.O. box numbers, when I got my dog from a breeder in the summer, had to fill out like applications and stuff like that. And she was really suspicious because we didn't have addresses. And she didn't know that. And she assumed Kahnawake was Kanesatake. And she thought I was from Kanesatake. And she's like, but they have street numbers. Like, I've been there. And I was like, well, like, I didn't want to tell her she was wrong. But, I mean, now she thinks, like, even though, like, you know, I have my dog and, like, I take care of him, but she was, like, really suspicious that she was gonna, like, be, like, you know, selling this dog to, like, some sketchy person.
Who doesn't live anywhere.
Yeah. And, like, for school, I get it a lot, like, Kahnawake, oh, where's that? And they're, like, they have this, like, you know, just this thought that it's this far away place, and they don't realize that, well, it's closer to downtown than Laval is.
Well, that's even some people that live out in Montreal East. Like, I have friends that live, like, way out in RDP. It takes them an hour and a half by public transit to get to school every day. And I'm like, well, I sit on a bus for a half hour, and they're not even, or sometimes I leave my house, and it could take me 15 minutes to drive into downtown on my own. And they're just like, they don't really understand that.
But I find, like, I take it, like, sometimes, like, when it's a teacher, like, oh, is there a lot of traffic? Like, you know, you live far away. It's like, yeah, there was a lot of traffic. Like, sorry I'm late.
But you can use it to your advantage.
But it's just, to me, like, that's unexcused ignorance that, and it's like, they shouldn't be afraid to come here. Like, I don't know about you, but I have this one friend who, she's been one of my best friends since high school, but she will not come to Kahnawake because her parents, like, are, like, not familiar with it. The whole being a reserve, like.
Oh, it's the stigma behind, like, those Indians. They're, you know, they're angry. They're all carry guns. If there's any kind of stereotype that's put out there, that's what's put in their minds, like, as a worry. And I mean, it's like, if you look at the past, right, and you look at where, like, how Aboriginal people, how we've been portrayed and stuff like that, then I understand where that comes from. But I mean, times have changed, right? You have to, if you really want to be a well-rounded person, to take the time to get to know somebody regardless of their race and, like, be open to visiting where they live, you can learn a lot. And I think that's something that a lot of people who are racist or who are ignorant, they just lack that.
Yeah, just that they don't know, and they need to maybe spend some time with.
Because I've been to some pretty sketchy parts of Montreal to visit my friends, and, like, living here is nothing like those places.
Yeah, I just find that, like, it seems like a lousy friendship when, like, you know, you'll go all the way to Laval and the boonies to go visit them, but they won't come. Like, I don't know, I find that happens to me a lot, and I hate that.
I think that might be, like, I think there's a difference between that and full-out ignorant racism, too. Mm-hmm. I think there's a line between that. And, I mean, it's good to acknowledge that, but also to understand ignorance exists in everyone. Like, there's a lot of things that I don't know. There's a lot of things that JD doesn't know.
But what about, I guess, when you use, like, a band card? Do you ever get those stares? The sigh.
Yeah.
Getting out the book.
Yeah, some people just really don't know how to use this. They have no idea what it is.
I think sometimes, though, the look that I get is, how could you be Native?
Yes, that's me too. And so they ask for a second ID.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, should I really have to do this? But I was like, okay, I want the hacks off. Yeah. But I guess with that, we'll take a quick commercial break, and we'll be back with more Exposed.